Mike, really good to see you.
Pleasure to be here as always, Sumit. Thank you.
And obviously, at this time of year, happy Christmas and wishing you a very safe and pleasant new year.
Thank you. And likewise, yes.
And looking back at the year, I mean, who would have thought when we spoke sort of end of last year, we launched Future Net Zero. I just want to briefly talk about saying thank you very much for supporting us throughout this year. How have you seen how the platform's done? Has it sort of lived up to your expectations?
Yeah, so listen, first of all, I've enjoyed a lot working together. I think the platform is positioning itself very well on a topic that is going to be the key topic for the next 10 to 15 years. The topic of net zero has, I think, been the winner of COVID, if I'd like to put it that way, because I think it's a topic that the entire country has been able to focus on. It's an ambitious journey, it's a technological journey, it's really, let's say, a lot of the characteristics that the government is talking about, the reinvention of the country. And I think net zero is really the place where you see that coming together. So I think the platform has been great to start to keep that at the front of everybody's minds and start to, make people more aware of the opportunities and the challenges that are coming from that transition. So I think it's very well positioned in exactly the right place.
Thank you very much. I mean, one of the things that I really was very proud of was that when we asked our readers back in kind of the height of sort of the pandemic, kind of April, May, we did a survey. And I think the fact, and you commented on it, that overwhelmingly 79%, despite COVID, we see our business future in a net zero pathway. And I think that really has crystallized over this year. When you look back at all the things that have happened, putting aside the COVID factor, how do you think that sort of business awareness of net zero has gone this year?
Yeah, I was concerned that it would decrease. There was a period of time there where everybody was so concerned with COVID that you felt that the net zero agenda was perhaps slipping a little bit. Have to say, very, very pleased to see that now that people have started to live with COVID. I don't think we have mastered it yet, but we've sort of learned how to live with it. We're back to the net zero agenda straight away. Okay. And I think the government is doing a great job as well of using that topic to stimulate the economy. A lot of the money that is going into incentives are all around green incentives, a lot of infrastructure projects, the shift to renewable energies, etc., smart buildings. So, I think it's a very positive time for our industry, and particularly companies that are playing in that space. Because the future of the world is electric, digital, and sustainable, and those are all values that companies like Schneider Electric have been working on for many years. So I think I personally, for the next 10 years, I think we're looking at a very positive story in terms of our industry, because that's where the focus is going.
I've seen, you've probably seen just a couple of days ago, Ofgem announcing the Rio 2 period, extra 40 billion because of electrification of heat and of transport. The government produced, the 10-point plan and then the energy white paper at the end of the year.
Yeah.
It seems very pivotal to me, very similar to sort of 10 years ago when we started, with the electricity market reform. This seems like another gear shift, but with a real kind of accelerator, which is let's get as much as we can in the next 10 years done. And as you said, government is backing it. Do you feel momentum has shifted now from talking? People talk about a point where things happen. Do you think we've reached that point?
Yes, absolutely. I think we will look back at the 2020 as, the year of COVID, and also somewhere as a pivot year around the net zero story. Now, it doesn't mean that nothing was being done before. It was. But as you said, you get these pivot points where it moves from being a conceptual topic, which is in the ascendancy, if you like, to starting to be absolutely core mainstream. And that's what it is. Now, your point about the next 10 to 15 years is absolutely correct, because, of course, the commitment is to be net zero by 2050. But to achieve that, you have to do all the work in the next 10 to 15 years. You have to build the infrastructure, get it in place, because then you start to see the benefits of that carbon footprint coming down. So ironically, while we may be looking at that as a 30-year journey, it's actually more like a 15-year journey in terms of actually getting the core work done. And I think that's going to be a very exciting journey.
Companies like you, you've always had a strong foothold in this space. You've been doing work on this for a long time. Do you see that all businesses will now take the sort of view you have, which is you have to invest, right? You're going to have to put your own money. Yes, it's fair that government creates regulation. Yes, it's fair that government provides incentives. But you as companies now must invest to make the difference.
Oh, I think every company now has to get that point. It says, first of all, there's a major market emerging here around the new electrical market, the new sustainable market. If you're not positioning your company today as a player in that market, and what I mean by that is, bringing offers to the market that are sustainable, that are helping to get to that net zero journey, then you're putting yourself at a serious disadvantage. I think that's clear. Okay. Now, in terms of, I think it's always been a good practice. I mean, when I was growing up in my career, it's very clear. I mean, as a company, if you don't determine your future, nobody's going to do it for you. You have to always be investing in what you believe is the opportunity that is coming. Relying on others to pass policies to help you is probably not a great policy for a business. I think it's something that can help accelerate a particular change. We saw that with offshore wind, where the market was initially incubated, if you like, and now the UK is a world leader in the global offshore wind market. So I think government definitely has a role, but for me the key role has always been about business, and I've been a great exponent of explaining as well that business has a huge role to play in reaching the net zero 2050. We have a very positive role to play, because at the end of the day, we are the ones that can bring the innovation, bring the supply chains, get the things built, etc. So I think, again, very interesting time for our businesses, great time for our market, great time for the planet as well, I have to say, because that topic, is really now top of everybody's mind.
What have businesses been saying to you as you've been talking around this year, and we all understand the financial pressures businesses have been, have they still been saying to you, Mike, you know what, we will look in those products that help cut our footprint. I do need some help around this. How do we invest in these things? Have they still been having these conversations? Has that surprised
yes,
you?
absolutely. I mean, back to the point of it being a pivot year, you see that accelerating. You see more and more companies now wanting to formalize their plans around reaching net zero, understanding what technologies, processes, services they can put in place that will help them to get there. And that's always some kind of waterfall, isn't it, Sumit, where you get companies like Schneider making a global commitment, and then of course the first thing we will do is go around and talk to our suppliers and say, well, we've made this commitment, how can you now help us to get there? And it sort of waterfalls down through the whole industry, and I think we've definitely passed that pivot point.
Let's talk about you. Time to move on. You've had what I think is it 3 years?
Actually, a very quick 3 years. Yes, yeah.
Wow. Looking back on those 3 years, what have you been most proud of, and what do you think you could have done slightly better around the kind of net zero space?
Yeah, I think the beauty of moving job is you look back and you realize what you should have done. I always say you only understand what you should have been doing when you get promoted. So there's always a good point to reflect on. Okay. What am I proud of? I think I'm proud of, let's say, how, we've sort of repositioned Schneider a bit in the market, particularly getting into that messaging around sustainability, the values of the company in terms of people development, diversity, net zero commitments. And the net zero commitment we're making was one of the more aggressive in the market, to be net zero by 2025.
Sure.
And then deploying that into the UK as well, taking that onto ourselves and saying, what are we going to do about that, etc. So I'm very pleased with that. My second reflection, to be honest, would be managing in a crisis is actually one of the more enjoyable times. It's not enjoyable when you're going through it, but it's always great to see how people rise to the challenge and give their best in challenging times. And while 2020 has been a challenge, I've absolutely thoroughly enjoyed it because I've seen the team and the market, and even a lot of colleagues that I work with in the market as well. Everybody really getting into that future vision of where this net zero story will be able to take us. Could we have done more? Of course. I mean, there's always more you can do, but I think I had the pleasure of coming in just after the Brexit decision. I have the pleasure of going out just as it implemented, and I had COVID in the middle of it as well. So it's been a very interesting time. It's been a fast 3 years, as they say. But very pleased with what we've done, and I move on now to my next journey, which is again with Schneider, but helping us to look a lot more at our digital business, our e-commerce business globally, because we see that as being a major part of how business will be transacted in the future as well. And of course, COVID has shown that, because the physical visiting of customers has also changed. We are very comfortable now having customer meetings online with each other, etc. So that's another pivot point that is happening. So I move from working on the net zero pivot now to, let's say, that e-commerce digital interaction focus of the future.
I know your successor, Kelly, we've spoken to her, has got good ambitions, and I'm sure she'll do fantastic. What do you hope Schneider will do in the UK over the next couple of years?
Oh, I hope we continue to lead, to, let's say, be one of the leaders in that transition to net zero, constantly bringing new technologies, helping our customers, working with our suppliers, being some kind of, let's say, momentum builder in the market as well around the whole electrical industry. I'm still very active with the BEMA Association, for example, seeing there's a very bright future for our industry in the UK. Particularly because of the way the world that they're moving is low carbon, electrification, digitization, etc. So I just hope we continue that journey, because I think it's going to be a very exciting 10 to 15 years.
Mike, all I can say is thank you so much for supporting us throughout this year. It's been a pleasure talking to you on a regular basis, and I wish you all the best.
Likewise, enjoyed it as always, okay, and wish you great success with the platform as well. Yeah.